For millennia, man has built structures of iron and stone to incarcerate his fellow man for crimes against humanity. Places where transgressors are punished and even tortured while they do penance for their sins after receiving judgment. Human repositories built to reassure good men that evil men shall do them no further harm. The state correctional institution outside of Ashwick, where Thomas Martin is awaiting his trial, is one such inescapable cage. And while we have come to expect that the iron bars and concrete walls of prisons exist exclusively for the living, in Thomas Martin's case, this assumption awaits an existential test. Shortly after 9 o'clock that Monday morning, a black chauffeur-driven limousine rolled slowly toward the state correctional institution's outer gate. Attorney Eric Westbrook sat comfortably in the back seat behind a partition, reviewing the contents of a leather portfolio holding visitation papers, legal memoranda, and several unsigned contracts. Each document represented another step toward acquiring Thomas Martin's mortuary, cemetery, and most importantly, something so incredibly invaluable that, while sought after by many a man since the beginning of time, has never before been acquired: the key to the afterlife. Eric's limousine stopped beneath the shadow of 2 guard towers. A steel barrier blocked the roadway. 3 correctional officers armed with automatic rifles approached the limo, while an armored vehicle pulled beside it. The sergeant in charge stepped to the front window and in an officious tone bluntly demanded, "Identification?" Without speaking, Eric handed his driver's license and prison visitation papers to his chauffeur, who passed them through the partially open car window. The sergeant examined them carefully. "Purpose of your visit?" "Attorney consultation with Mr. Martin," said Eric's chauffeur. With a raised eyebrow, the sergeant stated, "Our records indicate Mr. Martin represents himself." From the back seat, Eric rolled down his window, smiled, and politely, in a condescending tone, answered, "I am here to see Mr. Martin for my own interests." The answer seemed unusual enough that the sergeant stared at him for several uncomfortable seconds before handing back the documents to the chauffeur. The steel barrier slowly lifted. 2 state police cruisers emerged from opposite sides of the guard towers and escorted the limousine through a maze of razor wire fences that traversed the length of the compound. Their final destination, the administration building. Maximum security prisons accept no risks, and in this case in particular, because Martin, the death whisperer, was a celebrity inmate and America's public enemy #1, security was chokingly tight. Warden Samuel Jenkins greeted Attorney Westbrook on the granite steps outside the building as though welcoming an old acquaintance to a homecoming party. "Eric," he said, extending his hand, "it's been way too long. I suppose you're here to see Martin." "As always, you are correct," Eric answered. The warden escorted Eric down the marble corridor to his office. When they arrived, Jenkins motioned towards 2 brown leather chairs. The 2 men sat and a staff member appeared with 2 cups of coffee almost immediately. "You've represented murderers before." "I've represented alleged murderers," said Eric. Jenkins laughed. "Still billing by the hour, I see." Eric smiled. "By the quarter hour. Justice has always been expensive, and it isn't getting any cheaper." The warden leaned back. "I'll save you some trouble and won't waste your time." "I'm all ears," said Eric. "Martin refuses attorneys." "I know." "He barely speaks." "I know." "He claims he's already dead." "I know. I was present in court when he entered his plea." Jenkins folded his hands. "And yet you've come here to see him?" Eric nodded. "I believe Mr. Martin and I may have certain interests in common." The warden studied Eric carefully. "Be careful, counselor." "Of Martin?" "No." Jenkins looked toward the window overlooking the prison yard. "Of whatever or whomever he's been talking with and twisting his mind." Silence settled between them. It lingered just long enough to become uncomfortable. Finally, Jenkins stood. "I'll have you escorted." Thomas Martin occupied what correctional officers jokingly and somewhat nervously referred to as death row, not because executions occurred there. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts had abandoned capital punishment generations earlier. The nickname had arisen for another reason. That is where the death whisperer had taken up residence. Every inmate housed in that quarter insisted that someone whispered outside their cell each night. No officer had admitted hearing the voices, yet correctional staff rotated assignments away from the corridor whenever possible. Assisted by facial recognition technology, the escorting officer unlocked 3 electronically controlled security doors before stopping outside cell number 17. There, they were greeted by George Stevens, the prison guard assigned to monitor Martin's every move. If you recall, Stevens knows more than he is telling and has kept a tight lip on being contacted by the dead via his own personal cell phone. "There he is," said Stevens. Thomas Martin sat alone on his musty cot. Legal pads lay stacked in the corner of the cell 4 feet high with geometric precision. Court opinions, Black's Legal Dictionary, medical journals, anatomy books, and a King James Bible. His cell had the air of a professor's office who was in the process of preparing for the delivery of his next lecture. And now, it is time for us to take a brief respite to listen to an intermezzo conceived by world-renowned composer E. Dudek, after which the saga of Thomas Martin will resume. We continue. Stevens unlocked the door. "You have a visitor." Martin did not look up. "I know," he said. Stevens hesitated. "You know? How do you know?" "He has been expected for some time now." Stevens quickly stepped back into the corridor. The heavy iron bars closed and locked behind Eric. For several seconds, neither Martin nor Eric spoke. Martin quietly examined his visitor. Versace blazer, Italian leather shoes, gold cufflinks, expensive watch, predatory smile. "You are Emily's brother," said Martin. "I am. How did you know?" "I was informed you would be coming." "By Emily?" "No, not by Emily." "By who?" Martin grinned like the cat that swallowed the canary. "How is Emily?" "I don't know. I haven't spoken with Emily since the day of your arraignment." Martin easily saw through Eric's blatant prevarication. Martin said, "You came here to purchase something." Eric chuckled. "I came to negotiate." Martin slowly closed the notebook on his lap. Negotiations generally presume both parties possess something desired by the other. "They do," replied Eric. Eric stood opposite him. "You possess extraordinary property," said Eric. "My house, the lot, the mortuary have already been seized," said Martin. "I wasn't referring to your real estate." Martin remained silent. Eric leaned forward. "Intellectual property. You communicate with the dead." "No," Martin grinned. "They communicate with me because I am one of them." Eric appeared irritated about being corrected by Martin. "They text you." "Occasionally. They speak with you." "Indirectly." "They've built railroads." Martin smiled faintly. "I merely observed the construction." Eric then opened his briefcase. Inside rested several neatly arranged contracts. "Thomas, I can make you an extraordinarily wealthy man. Martin looked at the documents without touching them. Wealth only serves the living. I am already dead. Eric laughed. Martin continued. Mr. Westbrook, the newspapers are not exaggerating. In my situation, the truth is stranger than fiction. Eric laid out the contracts on the mattress. Sign these. You can use my pen. What do they convey? Your property. My cemetery? Yes. My mortuary? Yes. Martin nodded in frustration and said, I've already told you that they've been seized. To which Eric replied, I've already done the research, and upon the district attorney's recommendation, that order can be reversed. What do you want in exchange? In exchange, I offer you a quid pro quo. First, your legal defense at trial, using the same legal theory on which you built your case. Should we lose, I will file your appeal and represent you during the appeal process all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary. I will do whatever it takes to mount your legal defense. Otherwise, as a pro se defendant, you don't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning at trial. Eric continued, I'm not asking for much in exchange for your liberty. The contract gives me exclusive rights to your story, to all your prior and future communications with the dead, book deals, a cable TV channel, all social media accounts, franchising rights, deeds to your mortuary and the cemetery. I will establish a global business enterprise in your name called Death Whisperer Incorporated. It's all fully spelled out in the contracts, including but not limited to the business plan and profit-sharing distributions. If you agree, you and I will become billionaires overnight. And here's the kicker. The only way the contract goes into effect is if I win the case. Otherwise, I get nothing. That is what we attorneys call a standard contingency fee agreement. Martin looked directly into Eric's eyes and said, You forgot one important item. Eric's smile widened. Martin said, I fear not the death sentence, for I am already dead. Therefore I have no use for your money or the trappings of the material world. I am unpersuaded. Eric Westbrook was prepared for this answer. Mr. Martin, he said, there is another alternative. My sister Emily, dear little Emily, has confided in me the details of all you've done, including but not limited to the 5 murders you committed. I have it all recorded on audio tape. Emily did not know that Eric was secretly recording their conversation over dinner in the North End. If you do not agree to my terms, as an officer of the court, I am required to share this information with the authorities. Silence. Then Martin laughed, not loudly, not mockingly, simply with the quiet amusement of a man watching someone attempt to purchase the unobtainable. Then Martin said, I will not, the dead will not be threatened, intimidated, or coerced by you. You fool. You cannot blackmail the dead. Do you actually believe what you asked for belongs to me? Martin leaned in closer. It never belonged to me, and it never will. Eric's confidence faltered for the first time. Martin ended by saying, If you don't understand now, you soon will. At that exact moment, the fluorescent lights dimmed, then flickered. Somewhere beyond the walls came the unmistakable sound of a train whistle. Eric turned towards the cell door. I didn't see any railroad tracks near this prison. There are now, said Martin. The whistle sounded again, approaching closer. Metal wheels echoed beneath the concrete floor. The contracts on the mattress shifted, not from the wind, from vibration. Eric looked down. One page slowly slid across the mattress. Across the signature lines, someone or something had written words that had not been there moments earlier. They said, Not for sale. The handwriting resembled no living person's. It was some sort of calligraphy. Eric stared speechless. Martin said, You have been forewarned. The temperature inside the cell dropped noticeably. Eric's breath became visible. Then his cell phone vibrated. No bars, no service, yet one message appeared. Counselor. Another arrived immediately. You cannot negotiate with the dead. Eric's hands began trembling. Martin spoke quietly. They know who you are. Eric said, I never gave anyone my number. Martin said, they already had it. A third message then appeared. All property returns to its rightful owner. The lights returned to normal. The vibration ceased. The prison cell fell silent once more. Eric slowly gathered the unsigned contracts, called for Stevens to let him out, and left Martin's cell. He no longer possessed the swagger of his earlier confidence. As correctional officers escorted Eric back through the concrete corridors, Eric glanced over his shoulder one final time and said, A pleasure meeting you. Thomas Martin had already returned to his legal papers, as though nothing unusual had happened, as though conversations with the impossible belonged among the ordinary interruptions of prison life. At the end of the day, we have a powerful attorney who entered a maximum security prison believing he could negotiate ownership of a miracle. He possessed contracts, legal precedent, and every confidence that human greed could prevail over supernatural mystery. Unfortunately for Eric Westbrook, attorney at law, there remained one jurisdiction beyond the reach of the statute of limitations and appellate courts, a jurisdiction where witnesses never lied and verdicts could never be appealed, a jurisdiction where title deeds had been recorded long before mankind learned to write, a courthouse that was invisible, and where a judge was without a heartbeat. And somewhere beyond the last prison wall, another train had already begun assembling passengers for its inevitable departure, and Eric Westbrook stepped back into his limousine. Destination, the Conflation Station.